Warcraft 3 PTR just announced a number of changes to Warcraft 3 coming up. Some of the recent balance changes that have been happening. I'm gonna dive deep into them now and discuss them. Immolation, mirror image buff, Banshee buff. Let's take a look at it, and some small UI improvements. So what exactly can we expect from this March 3rd, 23 update for PTR 135? Well, let's check it out. Immolation has been seeing a slew of changes, including damage increase, mana decrease, and so on. What they're now playing around with is a damage reduction from 6.5, but keep in mind these are half second damage sticks. So double all of them to get the effective DPS. So I wanted to write this on the notepad here, as you can see what it used to be. For much of Warcraft 3, it was 10 DPS, then 15, and then 20. That was for level 1, 2, and 3, which also means that the first level was worth the most damage, relatively, let's say. The second one only gets 50% more, and then the third one gets 33% more, essentially, based on what it is by the time you pick that ability. Whereas if you look at mana burn goes from 50 mana to 100, so it becomes twice as good. Immolation doesn't, from level 1 to 2. So Immolation scaled quite poorly. The first level was the best, and after that you would likely want to go 3 points in mana burn and 1 point in evasion. That didn't change much. The first one with 13 is still better than 20. It's the same conversion roughly, about 50% difference, right? And then it goes from 20 to 32, which is a little bit more than 50%. Both are a little bit more than a 50% increase. Just tiny bit more and a little bit more. So it's not quite linear anymore in the same way, but let's talk about what this actually means. Immolation has been performing quite well over the last month since the patch has been live. Demon Hunter First is now a staple of the Night Elf matchup, and Immolation deals a lot of damage. Particularly humans are finding it very difficult to fast expand against such high Immolation damage. So what they're saying is, let's drop the damage at all levels, but increase the mana consumption per second, but there's no longer a mana activation cost. So what that's going to be meaning is that basically you can turn it on and off without penalty. But there are some potentially unintended side effects that I would like to illustrate. As some people have already found out, you can turn it on and off often. And while I think in general that will feel like a big buff and quality of life improvement for Night Elf, we also have to investigate if it is a good change or not. Try not to be alarmed by the female Demon Hunter. It's a reforged perk.
At last, we shall have revenge.
And while the voice sounds okay,
come.
the portrait in classic graphics, ooh, she's a beaut, ain't she? Anyway, what is nice quality of life improvement and a nice buff as well is that you can turn it on and off,
At last.
on and off, without really consuming that much mana. 8 mana per second is quite a lot. As you can see, when it's just on for a bit, it starts rapidly ticking down. That's a lot of mana degeneration or consumption. But if you press it very rapidly, you only lose 1 mana point per activation, because essentially I only have it up for 1/8 of a second. How much damage do you think it does during that time? 1 half damage stick? A partition of a half damage stick? Well, let's check it out. Hold on. This one has 400 health, the troll on the back. Look, it has 6 damage. So they immediately have regeneration. You can see the rate of regen is messing with things a bit, but what we're expecting based on the patch information is 6.5 damage. 6.5 damage looks like 6. They immediately regenerate. We clicked in, we saw he did have 6 damage. So even though we only consume 1 mana point, we are doing the full damage. So experienced exploiters and gamers will know what I'm going to be doing next. I'm going to be attacking the Ogre Warrior with normal attacks, and this trapper with full life will only take damage from Immolation.
The time has come.
And I'll stop when the ogre is dead. Now we're gonna watch the replay and we're gonna see how much mana did we spend and how much damage did he take.
At last, we shall have revenge.
Here we go. Coming up. Okay, we're starting. Let's say we started at 159. He has 2 pulses of damage, so let's say 157. We'll go on until the ogre is dead. The trapper took 100 damage. The damage is 13 DPS. And it took how long? When did I say we started? Let's watch one more time.
At last, we shall have
Our warriors
revenge.
have engaged the enemy.
We'll check if we entered with full mana. Yeah, we're entering with full mana. We're starting at 158 before our first immolation gets turned on. Okay, 158 is when our first immolation turns on. And then we kill the ogre at 209. 158, 209. That's 11 seconds. He took 100 damage. In 11 seconds, we should be doing 13 DPS. The PTR is now 13 DPS. We should be doing 130 damage. In 10 seconds we should do 130, in 11 seconds we should do 143. There's some regeneration, less than 1 per second, so he should still have 120 damage. He doesn't quite have 120 damage, but our mana consumption is only 30. Mana regeneration does exist as well, but we should have used 8 mana per second in 10-11 seconds, so we should have used 80 mana. And maybe the regen would have recouped about 10 mana points. Let's see what mana regen is like now. Less than 1 per second, about 0.8 per second. So let's say we get 10 mana back. We spend 80. It should have cost 70 mana, but it only costs us 30. So we spend less than half the mana consumption to do 80%, 85% of the damage we intended to do with a normal immolation. Let's play one more custom game where we just turn it on. We don't toggle it on and off, and we'll see what the actual consumption and damage dealt is in the same frame of time.
Your building is complete.
Dranakar.
At last, command
Same
shall
thing.
have revenge.
I pick immolation.
At last.
I just turn it on, kill the ogre, and when he's dead I walk away and I turn off immolation.
Though I be damned.
We watch the replay to look at the data.
At last,
About
we
to
shall
start.
have revenge.
Okay, immolation is on, you heard the sound, you can see the animation. He's taken his first 6 or 6.5 damage, let's say. The mana consumption has started at 1 mana. The time is 17 seconds of the replay. The ogre dies at 10 seconds. Consumption is 74 mana. So that's roughly 80 plus regen, 6 mana. Right? So the 80 mana is correct. The damage on the troll, 130. We expected about 130, right? Because 13 DPS, 10 seconds. It's more than 100. It's more than 130 because he regenerated. Probably he was dealt 11 seconds or 10.5 seconds of immolation damage. And he has regenerated since. Either he took 136.5 damage or 143 damage and then regenerated. He's missing 131. So it looks like leaving immolation on deals full damage. Toggling it randomly with very high APM, on and off, on and off, on and off, may cost you 30% of the DPS, but it will save you 70% of the mana. So it feels pretty inconsistent. I think you could either you could try to learn the exact optimal on and off toggling that would give you the full damage ticks. My guess is that there is a hidden game. Let's say there's a hidden tick meter that checks every half second of the game since you turn it on, or maybe there's like a hidden half-second tick meter that checks whether immolation is on or off. And while I'm toggling it on or off, if it happens to be off exactly at the time where it's coming in, then I miss a damage tick. I don't know, something like that. So maybe if you have like a very good regularity at the right timing with turning it on and off, not as frequently as I did it, but frequently enough to save a lot of mana, you could reach near optimal damage while not spending much mana. So this feels like not a fun gameplay mechanic. I think that ideally it should be fixed or made unattractive, but even though this exploit is both unfair if you use it effectively, as well as it's tedious for players to need to do it, generally people don't like this kind of stuff. There will be a few nerds that like it to min-max, but this is the kind of Brood War-esque optimization that can feel a little tedious, especially intimidating to new players or casual players. While that is a downside, the upside is that I do enjoy the flexibility of going into a peasant line, turning on immolation. They all go to places I can't reach, immediately turning it off without the feeling of the 20 mana penalty that it used to have of activating it. But just because I enjoy it as a user doesn't mean it's good gameplay. Maybe there should be an upfront cost, just like Siphon Mana has an upfront cost. Maybe the flexibility of literally choosing when it's on, when it's off, without any penalty is too good by itself. It makes it not an active gameplay making decision anymore whether you should turn it on, because the penalty of turning it on, at least with the implementation that it has right now, is it's not big enough of a penalty to give it a second thought, which means it is no longer a decision. Anytime you touch a unit, you should turn it on, and anytime you're not touching a unit, you should turn it off. It has now become a mechanical drudge rather than a gameplay decision. So that part has been lost with this balance change, no matter how much we may enjoy the flexibility of it, if that makes sense. So what do you think? Is this a fun gameplay mechanic, a good gameplay mechanic? Is this a good quality of life change? Or does it give too much power or flexibility to the Night Elf to make a decision like that?
Your building is
What is your opinion on it?
At last. Quickly, though I be damned.
It costs almost no mana like this. The activation mana cost should be 1 tick worth. I think that would be an easy fix, Meus Rex Secundus. If the activation mana cost deals 6.5 damage, which is a half second's worth of damage. Well, let's put it like this.
Quickly.
You could say that immolation has a cooldown of being able to be turned off of 1 second. As you can see right now, you can instantaneously press it, but if there was a cooldown to turn it off of 1 second, then you would naturally immediately trade 8 mana in 1 second for 13 DPS. And then you can turn it off anytime you want. While you might still have a optimal turn off threshold after 1.1 second, once it becomes available and then on again, that may still, in the current implementation, save you some mana, but it's not nearly going to be as high of a percentage because you will already have spent 8 mana and then maybe you're saving a few points of mana, and then you turn it on again every 1 second, and maybe people are not going to be wanting to do that. One solution could be 1 second cooldown of on-off, or when you turn it on, it immediately has 1 tick's worth of mana, like Meus Rex Secundus said. So this is something to be thought about. Overall, the damage drop is probably a good idea. I find the 8 mana cost per second quite expensive. I'm always a little bit wary of double nerfs. This is a double nerf, but there's also a buff. So between the two of these, you can make a graph and say after how many seconds is it more expensive, and up to how many seconds is it cheaper. And they did the maths. If you use it for fewer than 10 seconds, new Immolation is cheaper. If you use it for exactly 10, it's the same cost. And if you use it for longer than 10 seconds, the new Immo is more expensive. But of course, in a period of 20 seconds, you may actually, in the current implementation, on it for 3, off it.
Anador.
On it for 3. And turn it off again.
Though I be damned.
And then on it for 3. And then turn it off again. Now we've spent 15 seconds having it on for 9. So essentially it's still cheaper. And we had the flexibility of turning it on and off as we were or were not touching units. So this is true. Whereas in reality, because normally with the old version you would leave it on longer than necessary just so you don't have to reactivate. The reality is probably in a 15-second period of gameplay, you are still saving mana because you can turn it on and off. But in a 20-second period of Immolation gameplay, you're most likely looking at higher costs. Well, I think Immolation, because of the damage scaling, is best at level 1. I think because evasion and mana burn are so good at the higher level,
Though I be damned.
that you're likely not getting level 3 Immolation. Alright, maybe in the late game you will not be using Immolation to kill literally everything. It's more likely that you would be going 1 point in Immo, then get mana burn, or 1 point in Immo, then get evasion, and then max mana burn, most likely.
The time has come.
So, if level 1 Immolation is the best, you gotta wonder, how much are we using Immolation? How much are we using Immolation at the start of the game? Does it justify needing to use it? 3-1-1. Does it justify needing to use it for longer than 10 seconds, for longer than 15 seconds, for longer than 20? And I think the new one is better in terms of mana consumption, even though it goes from 6 to 8. With the removal of this, I think mana cost, it's better. Overall, if you take these two together, I feel like it's a buff in most cases. Let's say in 70% of the cases. And in 30% of the cases, it's a nerf. However, if Immolation is actually really good to get it at level 2 and 3 in matchups, then this would generally be a nerf. Whereas this is a nerf. So overall, it probably needed a nerf. It's probably overall a good change. But I would like them to consider how much freedom should be given to turn it on and off. Okay, that's Immolation. Now let's look at the next one. Mirror Image now does 20% damage instead of 15. So, I had found 2 things from my tests with Mirror Image. I've used it quite a bit. I also saw some pro games where Mirror Image is still being used against Night Elf in the Orc versus Night Elf one-on-one matchup. It is used to break away Acid Bomb and Entangle. It's the only way to remove Acid Bomb in the game. And it is one of the ways to remove Entangle in the game. Right now, Mirror Image has some applications that were historical. Namely, you could break those spells, Mirror Image and Entangle. You can scout with it, and you can tank with it. And since recently, Mirror Image also deals damage, 15%. I feared this would be way too much. But it's actually only 4 damage per hit. That's not all that much. It's less than... It's about a Peon's damage. Peon deals more damage but has a slower attack speed. So it deals about a peon's worth of damage. The main issue is that Mirror Image gives experience based on the Blade Master's level. That means that a level 5 blade that spawns an image, I believe, gives 57 experience per image. So if you were thinking of going level 3 Mirror Image and crit, you make 3 images, and those images get dispelled and killed, you are giving 171 points of experience to an opponent, which is about the same as 2 Wind Riders. So you make images, they deal 15% damage each. You give 2 Wind Riders worth of experience if someone goes Purge, Purge, Purge. Or double Dispel on both. They're gone, they get 2 Wyverns worth of XP. And we already know Wyverns are worth so much experience that we call them flying books of experience. Because they're so fragile and they give so much, 85 XP each. So that was point 1 is the 15% damage seemed scary, but it's not actually that scary. And the second one is, oh my god, they give so much experience. The only buff that they'll get is more damage, whereas the main reason we don't want to use it now at all, we don't want to use it more than the small little niche of Orc versus Night Elf, is because they give so much experience. Now, I did advocate for Mirror Image to give more XP, to give any XP, because it never used to give any. But I think every image, irrespective of the Blade Master's level, should give level 1 unit worth of experience, which is a peon, and then 80% of that. The peon is 25, 80% of that is 20, which is the same as a Feral Spirit, and that's because it's a summon. So I think it should give a summon's worth of experience since it is a summon. Yes, it does scale and get better and deal more damage and have more health. And when wolves become better, level 2, level 3, they also give more XP. But I would deal with that on a flat basis. If that's something they wish to do, Blade Master Mirror Image level 1, 12 XP. Level 2, 20. Level 3, 32. There we go. Now it gives 12, 20, and 32 XP. But not based on the blade level. Just based on the mirror image level, which is how Feral Spirits work. The Feral Spirit XP from a Farseer is based on the Feral Spirit level, not on the Farseer level. And I know the mirror image is a copy of the blade, but I don't think it should scale that way. Remember, if you make illusions with the illusion wand of anyone and anything, they don't give experience, but they also don't deal damage. But just because it deals a little bit of damage, I don't think it should give that much XP. I've tried to use it, but they just power level so hard off it, to the point where you have to deny your own images instead of leaving them in to sow confusion. And when they're half-life, you should run them away. And you can't even use them at all against Dispel because it's so profitable for your opponent. I think it should be 12, 20, 30 XP per blade level. 12, 20, 28 XP, something like that. Or 12, 20, 32. Whatever is standard numbers based on other summons of its kind. So that's how I think the XP could be done, and then you wouldn't need to buff it to 20%. I don't think the extra 5%, a mirror image level 1 doing 5 damage instead of 4, I don't think the extra 5% damage is worth it, giving 170 XP on level 3 Blade Master's mirror images. So that's my thoughts on that. I'm glad they're looking at it because mirror image is more underwhelming than expected, but I think the XP part has to be addressed. Do you really think it would break the game if they simply gave 0? Yeah, I think if they gave 0 XP and they do 15% damage each, I feel like that's a little bit too good. I'm very wary to give damage to things that don't give XP. StarCraft 2 does this with Swarm Hosts, Broodlords, Infested Terrans, throwaway units that don't give XP because they don't have heroes. And they're really tedious to kill through because it doesn't feel worth it to kill things that don't give XP. One thing that Warcraft 3 and Dota 2 have always done very well is that things that kill you give XP. And now that mirror images deal damage, I feel like it should be part of that, but not this much. Not this much. Okay, so that's my opinion and thoughts on mirror image. And then there should be one more change, I believe. And that is Banshee Magic Cell. And as always, I have to remind you guys, what did Banshee Magic Cell used to be like in the original Warcraft 3? Before Reforged and Neo Blizzard and stuff. Banshee Anti-Magic Cell. We're not going back so far to Reign of Chaos, okay? Just TFT, because in Reign of Chaos it worked fundamentally differently. So we're not going back that far. But I'll tell you what it has done during TFT. And basically, what a Banshee used to do is the following. Anti-Magic Cell used to give a 300 point damage block that could not be dispelled by anything. So, and it had some unintended side effects as well that were not very well documented. Of course, destroyers I don't think can remove it anyway because it is positive, but opponents should be able to dispel this. So basically, the advertised effect of TFT AMS was 300 points of spell protection. This meant that if you Stormbolted an Acolyte with an anti-magic shell, and Stormbolt deals 350 damage, 300 would be blocked and the Acolyte takes 50 damage. It also meant that if you used the Chimera that has magic damage, 300 points worth would be absorbed, and after that it would go away and it would take damage as normal. The unadvertised hidden effect was that it actually changed the damage type of the Acolyte of the unit. Normally, when a Chimera or a Destroyer attacks a Ghoul, damage type and armor type goes into effect. Heavy armor takes extra damage from magic attacks, and while they hide how much it is, I can tell you that it's 200%. So if a Destroyer with 20 damage attacks a Ghoul, normally that Ghoul takes how much? 40 damage. The Ghoul also has no armor, so there is no numerical reduction either. And we can actually show this by attacking this Ghoul with this Destroyer, though I'm not sure if it will work on the AMS Ghoul. We attacked the Ghoul, he took 40 damage as you can see. Regeneration is rapid on Blight, but is non-existent off Blight for Undead. He currently has 320 damage, we attack him, and he takes 42 damage, which is the exact double of 21. So, working as intended. Now, when we attack this Ghoul off Blight with AMS, if this was an enemy destroyer, it would definitely work. Now I'm actually not sure, because allied rules are sometimes different. He took 0 damage. But the question is, so it actually is working. The question is, how much of the shield is left? 2, 3, 4, 5. And actually we should test it with a new AMS because this one is running out. It has a duration. And we can make some more statues and destroyers to make it faster. But essentially, what you would expect is that the destroyer is still doing 40 damage per hit because of the damage type advantage. But the hidden thing was that the armor type changed to not be heavy anymore. Hold on a second. Let's kill the AI. I should have started this game without an AI opponent, but we can just deal with them with this Ghoul. Alright, he has been sent away, so very good. So we reapply the AMS. Okay, so what we should expect, 420 divided by 40, is that he should take 10 hits from the Destroyer before the magic shield disappears. However, if what I just said is still active and true, then it will take 20 hits because the armor type is ignored when there's AMS. So let's get 5 destroyers to test this theory, and we'll see if it takes 2 salvos from each or 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a little bit more. So essentially this is still true. A ghoul that has heavy armor that gets bloodily abused by witch doctors, spirit walkers, destroyers, chimera, frostworms and what have you actually changes its armor type. So this is a very strong hidden mechanic of AMS that has always been in the game, is that it protects heavy armor targets from magic damage. There's no interaction where spell damage deals bonus damage on heavy armor, like from Stormbolt, Blizzard and Flamestrike, but it is true for magic damage. The new what is the new armor type? Nothing. Neutral. Just, it is what it is. No amplification. So it is what it is. The new armor type is not changed to magic. Magic armor type doesn't exist. It just doesn't have any armor type. But yeah, so that's the good part of anti-magic shell, by the way. And now instead of 300, it would be 420. So you can actually see how strong that is, that it has been buffed in this manner. But the one thing that we did have recently, the last few months, is that AMS is now dispellable. That means an enemy can come in with a priest, and a priest will do 200 damage to summons with his dispel. So the priest can now come in, or 225 I think. The priest can now come in to 2 dispels and the AMS is gone. Whereas through most of TFT, AMS was undispellable. It was only breakable via the magic or spell damage. So this is a nerf. Mostly this change probably happened because of the undead human and the undead mirror matchup. I don't have enough data to tell you whether this has been a good change. I haven't seen Happy use Magic Shell at all since the patch. So there really is just very little data set, if any, that is relevant to work with. But if it doesn't get dispelled, it is undeniably stronger now because of the hidden armor change mechanic. This ghoul should have been dead already. So I hope you enjoyed this little deep dive into anti-magic shell. My thoughts on this are, we don't have enough info yet. People aren't using it. Therefore, I like the buff. It's the first fun thing Undead got since the recent slew of patch changes that is demonstrably a big buff. I say, experiment with it, find out how useful it is. Dispel is fairly prevalent, therefore you may not get your money's worth out of it, but it will actually survive potentially more dispel damage than before. But what I like about AMS being dispellable is that you create a situation where it becomes play and counterplay. With AMS working in the old manner where you can't dispel it, no matter what, you need to work your way through this shield. It is a shield. It is going to do what it advertises if you want to kill that unit. With the new one, you can either brute force through it like before, or you can dispel it. So I do like that change, that you can dispel it, because it creates play and counterplay. So long as it doesn't entirely invalidate its intended purpose, because dispel is so prevalent that it always gets removed and doesn't need brute force, I think that's a good thing. But changing the armor type of the unit, that seems like an unintended thing that I don't think is a good thing. Initially, it can't be what was intended. But then, it does feel fun for an undead player to remove heavy armor of ghouls and aboms, particularly because ghouls and aboms aren't that good anyway. It probably also means that AMS is currently less effective on fiends. This would be true if fiends take reduced damage from magic, which I don't actually know if it's the case. Let's check it out. Magic versus medium is 75, yeah. So wouldn't that mean that destroyers are less effective against an AMS fiend, because it has dragged away their medium type armor? So again, 420 points of shield
Must I do?
against 5 destroyers. 100 damage per hit. Should take 4 hits and then some. 4 hits, 4 salvos of hits from all of them. So, but because he's medium and only taking 75%, he should be taking 5 hits. But you'll probably find it's only 4 required. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 more hit, and it's gone. So he lost his advantage to magic damage. So it goes both ways. The current iteration of AMS is better on ghouls, meat-wagons. Can you cast it on meat-wagons? It's better on abominations, but it's worse
Let my crimes.
on heroes.
If that is your wish.
It's worse on heroes, isn't it? Because heroes take vastly reduced damage from magic. And it takes... And medium takes reduced damage from magic. And then unarmored is neutral, so it makes no difference for banshees or necromancers. Yeah, I think if you remove the hidden armor change that AMS offers, it's actually a buff. Because heroes and fiends are the biggest benefactors of AMS because they're the best. They're the best currently in the game. Oh, he doesn't kill things because he autocasts curse so long as there's new units. I have God mode, but I also have infinite mana mode, so it's only when they're all cursed that he kills one. That's interesting. And completely useless. Interesting, useless information. That's what I specialize in. So anyway, yeah. So no, I don't think they should remove the armor type modifier that AMS has, because it just makes fiends and heroes even more well protected. I think based on how we now know the game works and how we now know that abominations and ghouls are in popularity compared to fiends and heroes, I think it's a good thing that ghouls and abominations enjoy additional protection that is not maybe part of the original intent. Meatwagons, ghouls, and aboms are probably among the worst late game units that Undead has compared to destroyers, fiends, and heroes and frostworms or whatever. So yeah, I think this is fine. Don't change this part. And then there were some small UI improvements and loading screen text alignment fixes. The really big one, of course, that has been irking everyone, that has been making the news around the world, no doubt, after I discovered this, is did they center Orc on the versus ladder page? Check this out, this unacceptableness. See this 0% random? Did you see the 0% moving? No, neither do I. But there's an unacceptable situation with Orc. Check this out, look at the 0. I'm skipping Orc for now, yeah? Oh my god. Oh my god, they didn't fix it. I am going to...